Just about a minute away from hearing from the President of the United States. He had an extended conversation with reporters brought into the Oval Office, about 20 minutes of Q&A back and forth. We'll get that tape any minute. We know among the topics the President discussed, does he have confidence in his intel chiefs, who he slammed on Twitter this week after they said some things contradicting the President. He talked about trade negotiations with China. He talked about manufacturing jobs in the United States. And he talked about his confrontation with the Congress over his request for a border wall. As we wait for the President, Democrats made their opening bid today in the conference negotiations, the compromise negotiations now going on. Democrats proposing a $55.8 billion funding bill for the Department of Homeland Security that includes more money for Customs and Border Protection, more money for disaster relief, more money for Secret Service and deployment, border security technology procurement. Doesn't say the word wall in here as we wait for the President.
It's not going to say the word wall. It's like that's the last word they want to say. But it does have more money. And when I talk to people that are close to the White House, that may be the best that Trump can get. Maybe he could make an argument that, look, I've got more money.
Let's hear what he has to say about this.
Intelligence officials yesterday. Do you still have confidence in Gina Haspel and Dan Coates to give you good advice?
No, I disagree with certain things that they said. I think I'm right, but time will prove that. Time will prove me right, probably. I think Iran is a threat. I think it's a very big threat. And I think I did a great thing when I terminated the ridiculous Iran nuclear deal. It was a horrible one-sided deal that was $150 billion plus $1.8 billion in cash and lots of other bad things. If you remember, they took our 10 sailors out of waters that people are disputing and made us look very bad. But of course, the payment was due the following day, so they eventually let them go, which they had to. I disagree very much on that. I also think, and you'll be seeing something next week, because you look at what's happened in Syria with respect to ISIS and the caliphate. We took over a lot of area in the last 2 weeks. We've done tremendous in the last couple of weeks. At the same time, we're consolidating, and a tremendous amount of good things are happening. You even look at what's going on, and I can't tell you that this is a guarantee, because we're going into close to 19 years in being in Afghanistan. And for the first time, they're talking about settling. They're talking about making an agreement. And we bring our people back home. If that happens, we'll see what happens. But they're in very serious negotiations for the first time. There's a reason for that. So I think we're doing so well on a foreign policy basis. You look at North Korea. Many of you are going to be traveling with us to North Korea. And for the meetings with North Korea, we're going to a certain location. I think most of you know where the location is. I don't think it's any great secret, but we'll be announcing the location and the date, the exact date. It'll be the end of February. And we've made tremendous progress with North Korea. When I came in, or let's say at the end of the last administration, frankly, it looked like we were going to war with North Korea. Now, there's no missile testing, there's no rocket testing, there's no nuclear testing. We got back our prisoners or our hostages, and we're getting back our remains. They're coming in. And we've had some beautiful ceremonies in Hawaii, other places. So I just tell you that we are doing really well. Our military is being rebuilt. It's very close to being rebuilt. Tremendous amounts of new aircraft, new ships, new weapons of all kinds, which we need, because hopefully the stronger we get, the less you have to use it. I guess you know that from growing up in school. The stronger we are, the less we're going to have to use it. We don't want to have to use it, but we're going to have the strongest military by far that we've ever had. So I didn't see the report from the intelligence. When you read it, it's a lot different than it was covered in the news. But I think that Iran is a nation that we have to watch very closely. They sent up a rocket the other day, and it failed, but it was sent up. Now, they can say they're sending it up for civilian purposes, but I don't think too many people believe that. They're doing tests, and we don't want to be in a position where we're behind. We're not going to be leading from behind anymore. So that's the story. I have great respect for a lot of people, but I don't always agree with everybody, okay? So it's great. Well, we're going to go into everything. You probably saw this morning I put out a statement. We're going into everything. This isn't going to be a small deal with China. This is either going to be a very big deal, or it's going to be a deal that we'll just postpone for a little while. but we've been dealing with China. We've had a great relationship. I have a great relationship with President Xi. The relationship of my people to Chinese representatives has been very good. They're negotiating now. They'll be coming over here at about 4 o'clock, and we'll be talking to actually one of the top leaders in China, as you know. I think that probably the final deal will be made, if it's made, will be made between myself and President Xi. But we're certainly talking about theft. We're talking about every aspect of trade with a country. And we're talking about fentanyl, too. As you know, most of the fentanyl, which is killing 80,000 Americans a year, it comes through China. And in China, it was not criminalized. And they've agreed to criminalize fentanyl and give it the maximum penalty. The maximum penalty in China, if you're selling drugs, is death. It's the death penalty. And they've agreed to do the death penalty for selling fentanyl. And if it's shipped to the United States, that would be a very severe penalty. So I think that's going to have a tremendous impact. We put that one item into the trade deal, the fentanyl. I think that's a very important item to put in. But they've agreed and agreed very readily, we really appreciate it, to criminalize the sale of fentanyl. Steve?
Do you think you'll make the March 1 deadline?
I don't know. I mean, it's, I can tell you there's a lot of people are working. What happens, we're charging large tariffs to Chinese products that are coming in, which hurts China. As you know, you saw the reports. Out of the 25 points, we're paying for 4 points out of the 25. They're paying for 21. That's a big difference. I've always said that. We're taking in billions of dollars, and frankly, we're creating a lot of industry. But the rate goes from 10% to 25%. So they would like to do it, and I'd like to accommodate them. If we can, I'd like to accommodate China if we could get the deal done. It's a lot of work because this is a very comprehensive deal. This isn't what we're talking about. You know, they're going to buy some corn and that's going to be it. No, they're going to buy corn. Hopefully, they're going to buy lots of corn and lots of wheat and lots of everything else that we have. But they're also talking heavy technology, heavy manufacturing, financial services, and everything else.
So you may have to extend the talk beyond March the 1st. Is that what you're saying, sir?
I think we can do it by March 1st. Can you get it down on paper by March 1st? I don't know. I can say on March 1st, the tariff on China goes to 25%, and that's a big tariff.
Mr. President, State of the Union, a couple of days away. I'm just curious, what's the tone looking like for the State of the Union, sir? And then I don't know if you've seen, Democrats have tapped the rebuttal speech, Stacey Abrams, who ran for governor of Georgia. Any thoughts on their picks, sir, or any of the messaging?
Oh, I campaigned against Stacey Abrams. I know that President Obama campaigned for her, Michelle Obama campaigned for her, and Oprah campaigned for her. And all Brian had was me. And he won fairly easily, fairly easily. So I hope that she does a good job. I mean, I respect her. I don't know her. I haven't met her, but I hope she does a good job.
And the tone for your speech, sir, can you tell us how the state...
I think it's unification. I think it's industry. I think it's about the people that you see right here. It's also working with these people because they've been incredible. We have had some incredible report, and we've had incredible Republican support. The problem is the Democrats, when they say we don't want to build, as an example, we don't want to build a wall because it doesn't work or because it's immoral. Well, it's also immoral, the people that come into our country that shouldn't be here and kill people. That's immoral, too. That's a lot more immoral. So, but I really think it's going to be a speech that's going to cover a lot of territory, but part of it's going to be unity. Yeah, please.
President, Nancy Pelosi said this morning that there is not going to be a wall in this deal, but she did say she'd be open to other kinds of physical barriers. Would you accept that?
No, because if there's no wall, it doesn't work. She's just playing games. So if there's no wall, it doesn't work. And we're building the wall right now. I mean, a lot of people don't know that, but we have a lot of wall under construction. We've given out a lot of contracts over the last 3-4 weeks, good contracts. A lot of wall is soon going to be under construction. We're finishing up design on certain areas, the most important areas, the Rio Grande area and others. We are building a lot of wall. I'm not waiting for this committee. And I've told a lot of people, I don't expect much coming out of the committee because I keep hearing the words that we'll give you what you want, but we're not going to give you a wall. And the problem is, if they don't give us a wall, it doesn't work. Without a wall, it doesn't work. We have caravans right now coming up from Honduras who we give a lot of money to, which is stopping, by the way, but we pay hundreds of millions of dollars to Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. And then they have caravans leaving their country coming up here. And by the way, if you go to Tijuana and you take down that wall, you will have so many people coming into our country that Nancy Pelosi will be begging for a wall. She'll be begging for a wall. She will say, Mr. President, please, please give us a wall. It'd be very interesting. Some people have suggested, let me take the wall along California. Let's move it to Arizona. Let's move it to Texas. And you know, it'll be a very interesting statement about Nancy. So in California, they wanted the wall built in San Diego so badly. And we built it. And probably I should have waited. Because as soon as it was finished, they started screaming, we don't want a wall, we don't want a wall. But they wanted the wall so badly. And by the way, it worked. Nobody's getting through. But the minute it was built, they started saying, we don't want a wall. Without a wall, it doesn't work. It's very simple. I mean, I'm not saying this as a Republican. I'm not saying it as anything other than a fact stater. Without a wall, it just doesn't work.
Mr. President, after listening to the hardship from many federal government workers, as well as those who were contractors and who relied on the federal government employees' finances to fund their businesses, are you willing to jeopardize the economy again and also your presidency with people who are fearful of another government shutdown over this law? And also I want to ask you about Jesse Smollett. Have you heard about that story? The Chicago situation, the actor from Empire who was allegedly attacked with racist and homophobic.
That I can tell you is horrible. I've seen it last night. I think that's horrible. It doesn't get worse as far as I'm concerned. As far as the people are concerned, many of those people wanted me to stay out, but I didn't want to do it because people were getting hurt. What I think is the worst sin of all is the fact that we're allowing people to come into this country and sell drugs and human traffic and do all of these horrible things, that if we had the simplicity of a well-constructed, beautiful barrier or wall, they wouldn't be able to come into our country. That, to me, is the great sin. And everybody knows it works. I watched this morning, early in the morning, somebody trying to justify walls are immoral. I mean, if walls are immoral, maybe we should take down all the walls that are built right now. You will see a mess like you've never seen before. So I only say this. I was elected partially on this issue. Not as much as people say, but partially on this issue. This is a very important issue. Nothing to do with elections, nothing to do with votes, only to do with common sense and only to do with security. And if we don't put up a barrier or wall, a strong one, but one that looks good. In the old days, they used to build them, they looked terrible. Now we build them, they look really good. If we don't put up a physical barrier, you can forget it. Our country is going to be a very unsafe place. People are coming in, drugs are coming in, human trafficking is coming in, which is so horrible. Things are happening that won't happen after the wall is constructed. So we're building a lot of wall. We're building new sections starting in about 2 weeks. We're building some brand new sections, large sections, and the wall is getting built. I would like to build it even faster, but it's getting built, and it's getting built very substantially, as some of you see because you've been there. Yeah, please.
And the immigration question, but first if I can just clarify what you said about North Korea. Do you have an agreement with North Korea on the time and place for that next summit?
Yes, I do.
Can you share it?
Yeah, we're going to very soon. We're going to announce it pretty soon. We'll be announcing it early next week.
Okay. And you also said that...
And they very much want the meeting. And I think they really want to do something. We'll see, but I think they really want. But again, remember, North Korea was a whole different story. When I came to office, many people thought we were going to war with North Korea. I would sit and listen, and I would read people saying, go to war with North Korea. Well, you'd lose, I mean, potentially hundreds of millions of lives. You know, Seoul has 30-some-odd million people. And it's literally right off their wall, by the way. But that wall works, I can tell you.
You just about the wall, you just said that people make that out to be a bigger deal on your election than you think it was.
Well, it was one of my points. Yeah. Well, they do. Now they say it's a wall because I've accomplished practically everything else. Look, I accomplished the military. I accomplished the tax cuts. I accomplished the regulation cuts. I accomplished so much. The economy is the #1 economy in the world. We're the #1 economy in the whole world. We're the #1, not even close. Companies are pouring into our country. I've accomplished so much. So now they say, oh, if he doesn't get the wall, they make that the only issue. But it's not going to work because I'm building the wall. The wall's happening right now. Okay?
The government's been reopened for several days now. Are you closer or farther apart on an immigration deal now than since you opened the government?
With respect to the committee,
Yes.
I would say we're the same. Because I'm hearing they don't want to do a wall for political reasons. I actually think it's bad politics. I mean, frankly, I think them fighting us on what everybody knows has to be done to have proper security. And you can add the other things. But the other things only really work if you have the physical barrier. Without the physical barrier, what are you going to have, drones flying over the 12,000 people? You're going to have a nice drone flying, doing circles around the 12,000 people that are walking in from Honduras and Guatemala and El Salvador? No, you don't want that. So I want to do real things, like the deal with China. I want it to be a real deal. I could do a deal with China where people would say, isn't that wonderful? It's not wonderful. I have to do the real deal. We have to open up China. We're open to them. They have to be open to us. So it'd be so easy for me to make a deal with China, but it wouldn't be a real deal. I could get them to buy more corn than they've ever bought and more soybeans than they've ever bought, and they'd be so happy if I did that. But they're going to do that, but in even higher numbers, but we're going to do a lot of other things. And just remember, we are taking in billions and billions of dollars from China. We never took in 10 cents from China. China's being charged tremendous amounts of money for the privilege of coming in and doing what they do to our country. They're being charged a tremendous amount of money. And we're going to make a deal. I think we're going to make a deal with China. But it's going to be a very comprehensive deal. We're going to cover everything, okay?
You mentioned all the economic indicators are going up. Why then are U.S. deficits and the national debt increasing at a time when...
Well, the trade deals won't kick in for a while. You know, number one, the USMCA hasn't even been approved yet. It has to go before Congress and get approved. Now, it should get approved quickly. NAFTA was one of the worst deals ever made. During the campaign, I said I will either terminate NAFTA or negotiate a new deal. And we negotiated a good deal. Now, if you went back to pre-NAFTA, that would be frankly okay with me, pre-NAFTA or the New Deal, but I won't allow NAFTA. NAFTA was a horrible deal for this country. You look at the scars all over our country where you go to New England, you go to Ohio, you go to Pennsylvania, you see what happened in North Carolina. You have factories that are still empty from what happened with NAFTA. NAFTA was a horrible deal. The USMCA is a great deal. But pre-NAFTA, we had huge surpluses with Mexico. With NAFTA, we have huge deficits. We lose $100 billion a year on trade with Mexico. Does that sound good? And this has been going on for many years. So I stopped it. I stopped it a lot.
More on the wall. You said the wall being basically held hostage for political reasons by the Democrats. Is there anything you would have done differently in the first 2
No,
years?
there's nothing. Look, they had this from day one. Yeah. Could I have done it differently? No, not really. I mean, I think by having the shutdown, we've set the table for where we are now. If I didn't do the shutdown, people wouldn't know, they wouldn't understand the subject. Now they understand the subject. They realize what a humanitarian crisis it is. It's called, like in deal making, setting the table. Or, you know, setting a stage. We've set the stage for what's going to happen on the 15th of February. I don't think they're going to make a deal. I see what's happening. They're all saying, oh, let's do this, but we're not giving one dime for the wall. That's okay. But if they're not going to give money for the wall, it's not going to work. And if it's not going to work, then the politicians are really wasting a lot of time. Okay.
If there's no money,
I would do that. I would do that. We have money, just so you understand. We have money. We're building the wall right now, a lot of it. People don't know that, and nobody reports it, but that's okay, because it's not very exciting when you say it's built, you know. But let me just tell you, we're building the wall right now. It's going up fairly rapidly. We're renovating tremendous amounts of wall, which is good stuff that's in very bad shape with massive holes in it and fencing coming down. It's being beautifully renovated. In some cases, we have to replace it. We renovate some, we replace some, we build some new. But the wall is going up right now in all different forms. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
What's been holding you back from declaring national emergency, Mr. President?
We're going to see what happens on February 15th.
Are you concerned about
Against
Are you
who?
concerned about legal challenges?
No, I'm not concerned. I'm not concerned.
But you still don't think there's going to be a deal, but you're not going to declare it now. Don't you think that
No,
undermines?
I'm waiting, excuse me, I didn't say that. I said I'm waiting till February 15th. On February 15th, the committee will come back, and if they don't have a wall, I don't even want to waste my time reading what they have, because it's a waste of time. Because the only thing that works for security and safety for our country is a wall. Now, when you couple the wall with sensors and drones and all of these other things, that works as a combination. But if you don't have a wall, they're all just wasting their time. It's just politics. Thank you all very much. Thank you very much, everybody.
Mr. President, I brought you.
All right, that was President Trump just moments ago, following not too long after Democrats unveiling their plan in these negotiations to keep the government open and to talk about border security, where they say there is not going to be a wall, but they're open to barriers. That's the word from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. But you just heard President Trump there saying if they are not coming to this negotiation talking about a wall, he doesn't even want to waste his time reading what they have. Let's get to Abby Phillip at the White House. Abby, you were in that room. Also, we heard the president talking about his insulting one of his intel chiefs, really all of them, but specifically going after the director of national intelligence, Dan Coats, and he said, well, time will tell if he's right. But let's first talk about the discussions or these negotiations that are being set, the stage being set there, as he put it, with Capitol Hill.
Yeah, interestingly, Brianna, it sounded very much like President Trump was essentially closing the door to negotiations. He said repeatedly he didn't think anything was going to come out of this conference committee that's been meeting with Republicans and Democrats on the Hill. And he said point blank in response to a question I asked him about Nancy Pelosi's comments about the wall, saying that there would be no wall in the deal, but perhaps physical barriers. He said, I will not accept that if it doesn't have a wall. So the president's drawing the line really brightly in the sand here and adding that if on February 15th he gets a deal on his desk that does not include the border wall, he's not even going to look at it. He's just going to go to the other option. He made those comments in response to a series of questions about why he hadn't yet declared a national emergency. He suggested that February 5th deadline would be the time that he would decide on that. But the president seems to be not any closer to being willing to compromise on this point than he was at the beginning of that 35-day shutdown. He called the government shutdown a setting the table moment, an opportunity for him to explain to the American people the importance of the border wall, which he implied would make it easier for him to sell a national emergency or something like that, executive action, to build the wall without Congress. And he also added that he didn't think that they were any closer to getting a deal now than they were when the government reopened on Friday. So really a lot of pessimism, Brianna, from the president. And I know you mentioned his comments about his intelligence chiefs. I asked him at the very beginning, you insulted these individuals. They work for you. Gina Haspel, the CIA director, and the director of national intelligence, Dan Coats. Do you still have confidence in them? And he didn't really go there. He didn't answer the question directly, but he suggested that even when he has respect for people, he disagrees with them. And he suggested that he would be proven right over time. Once time shows all of these issues to be what they are, he thinks that he will be proven right and his intelligence officials will be proven wrong on a number of issues, whether it's Iran or North Korea that he highlighted specifically, Brianna.
All right, Abby Phillip, stand by for us. I want to bring in John King, our chief national correspondent. And it's so interesting to hear the president talk about that, because if you keep in mind that he tweeted today, call it a wall, he essentially said a wall is a wall. It's not just enough that Democrats might be open to a physical barrier. He wants it to be called the wall. It's the branding of it that seems so important to him.
The branding of this, wherever we end up, is part of the argument and debate now. But that 20 minutes or so of Q&A was welcome to the parallel universe that is sometimes the thinking of our president, in the sense, to Abby's point, he said the shutdown set the table. People now understand. Well, look at his polling numbers. Bad before the shutdown, worse now. Who do people trust on border security? Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats more than the President of the United States, who was absolutely right when he says, I was elected in part on this issue. So you see what animates him, though. He gets so animated, his answers are longer about the wall. He says the Democrats are playing games. Without a wall, it doesn't work. So you just, yes, they will negotiate for the next 2 weeks, but we are headed towards some executive action, whether it's a national emergency or some other executive action, because unless he blinks again and changes his mind again, because he's not going to get what he wants in this spending bill. Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker, making that very clear today. The President making clear, he says it's a waste of time. So the question is, do we have a shutdown? Or does he sign a spending bill that keeps the government open and then pretty much at the same moment sign some executive action, national emergency, to redirect money from other agencies to construction of the wall, and then we go to court?
Do you read that he is completely dismissing these negotiations that are going on the Hill? I wonder, because he tweeted about how the Homeland Security Committee is wasting the time. It's actually appropriators. It's people from the appropriation committees in the Senate and the House who are working on this. Is this just, to him, it doesn't matter what's going on? Is that your read?
He clearly said he wouldn't even read it. He said it'd be a waste of my time. I won't even read it if it doesn't have the wall. What this does, in part, is it makes clear to his base, even though for 2 years of all Republican Washington, the president kept punting, kept agreeing with congressional leaders, Republican congressional leaders, and signing spending bills without his wall. He's animating his base by saying, this time I'm going to fight. This time I mean it. This time I'm staying in this. But at the same time, his base may like that, but it undermines the Republicans in the room who are trying to say, can't we get $2 or $3 billion for the president? Can't we try to meet the president halfway? When Democrats see this, trust me, Nancy Pelosi tells her negotiators, Chuck Schumer tells his negotiators, stand firm, because the Democrats believe they have the high ground politically on this issue. The president's right. Many of them in the past voted for this. They think the past is gone, that because of this president is unpopular in places the Democrats care about, largely suburban America, that they can fight this fight. And that undermines, again, it's the president making a political argument that's disconnected from reality sometimes. We're not building a big new wall. They're repairing existing wall.
He says it's rapid and it's beautiful renovations, like he's talking about a hotel lobby.
He also says the Democrats are trying to stop him here because he's accomplished, quote, practically everything else that he campaigned on. He did get his big tax cut. The economy is humming. The president has done a lot when it comes to regulations. Remember repeal and replace Obamacare? He hasn't gotten that. Remember drain the swamp?
Even the skinny
that has
repeal.
not happened.
That's right. All right, let's listen to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Just to put this all into context, she unveiled the offer, the sort of out-of-the-gate offer from Democrats just a short time ago. Let's go now to Sunlen Sirfati on the Hill for that. Sunlen?
Well, Brianna, I think what's most notable in this proposal this draft proposal that was released this morning from the Democrats is what's not in the proposal. There is no money for the wall. All the more notable given the fact of those recent comments just in the last few minutes by President Trump. And we indeed again heard from Nancy Pelosi at her press conference this morning saying no money will be in the legislation that we ultimately vote on. But the Democrats did, and you see some details there, release their proposal, starting point of the negotiations. It's a $55.8 billion plan for DHS funding, including $14.2 billion for U.S. Customs and Border Protection. That includes things like recruitment, staff, equipment, technology. $7.4 billion for ICE, including increased inspections and additional attorneys. And again, this is just a draft proposal. How things work up here on Capitol Hill, as you know, a starting point for negotiators, that 17 person team up here, bipartisan team, starting yesterday and sitting down finally for the first time. A good place to have negotiators start is having some sort of draft proposal, but of course not helping any of this. I think Democrats and Republicans certainly believe that, and that's a feeling up here on Capitol Hill. This rhetoric coming from President Trump saying this cannot happen, this could potentially be a waste of time, absolutely money for the border wall. That certainly does not help as negotiators up here still continue to try to work. Brianna?
And let's listen to the House Speaker as she unveiled this plan.
There's not going to be any wall money in the legislation. What did he say today? It doesn't matter what Congress does. I knew that he wanted it all to himself. I mean, oh, really? A president who wants to have Congress be completely irrelevant in how we meet the needs of the American people? No, come on. So let them work their will.
There you have it, John King. It's interesting to hear. This is just a big power struggle. But I also wonder, as you hear the president talking about deal making, what does it mean for that persona that he tries to project of being a deal maker when he says he won't even look at an opening offer? It doesn't seem really like a negotiation.
What does it say that he couldn't get anything in the 2 years when his own party controlled all of Washington? Again, the president, it's the disconnect from at least the reality in this town when he says it set the table, people have a greater understanding now. It did set the table for the new power structure in Washington. Speaker Pelosi is more powerful now than she was going into the shutdown. The president is weaker now than he was going into the shutdown. The president couldn't get a wall out of a Republican House, Republican Senate, because not enough Republican senators would go for it. Now the House won't pass it. Now the Democrats control the House. So he got his $5 billion from the Republican House, couldn't pass the Senate. Now he gets nothing from the Democratic House. The question is, what will Republicans in the Senate give him? They won't give him his $5.7 billion. They can't, because this is a negotiation now with Democrats at the table. And I will say this, Republicans shut down. So they will tell the president, keep the government open. If you want to do your national emergency, do it, but do not let the government shut down again.
They're animated by what they're seeing, this national poll, the upset over the shutdown, the fact that voters are saying it's the fault of Republicans over Democrats. Is he animated by something else, though, as we know that his campaign chief is saying, hey, look at the polling on the wall in these districts that Democrats won, but they're swing districts.
He believes, and his political team believes, that they can recreate the 2016 map in 2020. Other data would suggest otherwise. But we don't know who the Democratic opponent is. We don't know what the economy is going to look like then. So the president is animated by this, and he is absolutely right that he was definitely in the Republican primaries. Immigration was his calling card. The general election was a mix of immigration, the trade stuff, more. I would say the trade and the economics helped him more in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, the big blue states he flipped red. But his team thinks he can still make this case in the places that matter when you're talking about an electoral college. That remains to be seen. And there's a bigger question, which can he do that? Can he do that on this issue if he continues to lose on this issue and make it a campaign issue? That'll be interesting to see. But remember, the Trump brand was strength. He's not very strong right now. So we'll see how this plays out. He clearly just is not going to, at least today, he has changed his mind. If you read his morning tweets, there's inconsistencies even in those 7 tweets. So that doesn't mean where we are today is where we're going to be tomorrow or next week when we get to deadline time here. But clearly today he is essentially saying, forget about it. I'm not taking whatever you give me because I know it's not going to be good enough, and we're going to have some sort of a executive power, either national emergency, some other executive action. He tries to build the wall. That will get challenged in court. We'll see where we go.
All right, John King, thank you so much. So also breaking, the Mueller team releasing details of the evidence they collected against Roger Stone, years worth of evidence, in fact. Plus, Venezuela's self-declared president says Maduro's forces tried to enter the home of his wife's family as this standoff over power escalates. So we have some new details on the arrest of Roger Stone. The special counsel's office revealed today that they collected several years worth of information from Stone's iCloud accounts, his email, his computer hardware. Former counsel to the U.S. Assistant Attorney General Carrie Cordero is with us here. We also have former FBI Special Agent Anthony Ferrante. How significant is this, Carrie? We're talking about it spanning years. Why is that important?
Well, from the perspective of the information we've learned from Stone's indictment on obstruction and lying to Congress and other things, we know that he was in touch with individuals connected to releasing some of the information in the Russian 2016 election interference. And so the one question will be, how far back does that go? His involvement both with the campaign and his involvement, his communications with individuals who were connected to the Russia investigation. You know, the other thing that it then also potentially provides more legal exposure for Roger Stone is there other evidence of crimes? We saw with Michael Cohen, with Paul Manafort, other types of financial crimes or business-related crimes that are revealed in the course of this investigation. And so whether there's other tangentially related crimes that Roger Stone might be implicated for, you know, that information, if they find it, they'll have to pursue it.
That could be very bad for him.
Well, one doesn't know, you know, whether or not there's other things he's been involved with that are not connected to the Russia investigation. Once information is lawfully obtained pursuant to his search warrant, then it can provide leads for further investigation.
Yeah, we'll see if there's a lot of string to pull there. Anthony, so the president, he says that he's thinking about asking the FBI to review its process for handling the arrests after after the scene that we saw there at Roger Stone's house, right? There were a large number of armed agents in tactical gear. They went up to Stone's house pre-dawn. Do you see anything wrong with how that, it's being called a raid, but this was,
A magistrate judge, the FBI agents surround the house. They execute the warrant. They knock. The door was answered. They took Roger Stone into custody. They secured the residence to make sure there were no other threats within the residence. They removed Roger Stone and then essentially shifted gears and began executing a search warrant. It's too bad we're having this discussion right now, because when it comes to executing an arrest and search warrant, the safety and security of the law enforcement officers and those involved should be paramount, and this shouldn't be a political discussion.
why is it conducted this way, where the agents would go up, they wouldn't give notice? First off, I want to point out that Roger Stone is comparing this to like the raid against bin Laden. We know that's totally untrue. Why would they do this with some secrecy, even though Roger Stone was kind of expecting this? What are the goals as far as maybe preserving evidence? Because Roger Stone has actually been accused of lying and basically not providing evidence that is out there that exists to prove certain things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there have been many comparing this arrest to the arrest of a white-collar crime. And I think rather than putting the FBI under scrutiny, we should be looking at Roger Stone and asking, what does Mueller have on Roger Stone that would essentially tell the FBI, don't handle this like a standard white-collar crime arrest, right? They want to get in there. They want to preserve evidence. Every charge in the indictment of Roger Stone has something to do with obstruction of justice, which means they're concerned with him destroying evidence. So they want to take him into custody, surprise him, and then start searching for that evidence through a valid search warrant.
Such an important point. I want to ask you, Carrie, though, because the president has insulted his intel chiefs, as you are aware, and he has said that time is going to tell if he is right about taking issue with them. He went on Twitter, he called them naive, he said they need to go back to school. This was after they all went before the Senate and completely contradicted him on ISIS and North Korea and other threats facing the U.S.
Well, that worldwide threat briefing, which happens every year, this is normal for the Director of National Intelligence and some of the major intelligence chiefs to go before the Senate Intelligence Committee and testify to them and provide information to the public about what the major threats are. And it's so important that we see that information come out publicly. The information that they provided in that threat briefing, which there's a lengthy written statement in addition to the testimony that they provided, is the intelligence community's best assessments. It's okay for a president and a policymaker to question and challenge in an informed way their intelligence advisors. What's different about this is the president makes statements claiming national security justifications for things, and the basis upon which he does that is so completely unclear that the public has no understanding as to who he's taking advice from. Is he taking advice from his intelligence advisors at all? Is he not listening to them at all? We just don't know where he gets advice from. And on the issue of the search, just to add on, if the president sees on TV that a search is executed on his longtime friend and he doesn't understand the way that law enforcement works, which we might know that perhaps he doesn't understand that, he can ask for a briefing on, tell me more about how law enforcement searches work. Why was there people who were armed? Roger's my friend. That's understandable. What's problematic is the way that he drives this in a public forum, because it undermines the FBI and it undermines law enforcement.
But that's what he's trying to do, Carrie. Isn't that the objective?
I think it is. It makes it look to people that they're doing something wrong, which otherwise, in this case, they're following standard law enforcement procedure.
If they're actually doing something right, as Anthony, you informed us of. Anthony Ferrante, Carrie Cordero, thank you so much to both of you. The former ambassador to Afghanistan is sounding the alarm about Trump's plan to end America's longest war. Why he says the president's negotiations essentially amount to a surrender. And a stunning new poll we're seeing about the impact of the government shutdown. It has been hurting the GOP's favorability. We'll talk about that.